Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And tomorrow, the 1st of November, is a day that South Africa has been dreading. Because it's a day that Moody's will have a look at how they're going to rate the Rand. And I've just been looking at the value of the Rand on the open market. And it's just broken through 15 Rand to the dollar. In other words, the Rand is becoming less valuable. So the market is kind of starting to price in the potential of a negative reporting from Moody's tomorrow. And one can understand why. Calling a spade, Finance Minister Tito Mbowene's medium-term budget policy statement was refreshingly honest about the precarious situation the country now finds itself in and the severe challenges we face, says Martin Ackerman, chief economist and advisory partner at Citadel. Ackerman said, most notably, he was candid about South Africa's dire situation. We are effectively facing crocodile jaws that are widening to swallow the South African economy, as tax revenue has continued to fall while government expenditure has continued to rocket. Now, there are so many examples of wealthy South Africans fleeing the country right now. They're getting off the sinking ship, and that's the tax base that's going with them. It's a huge loss to the South African economy, and you can blame it all on this ANC government. They are just sinking their own ship. The budget deficit is expected to widen to 6.2% of the GDP or gross domestic product in 2020, National Treasury said on Wednesday. According to Treasury's budget review document, this is mainly due to tax revenue shortfalls, lower economic growth and the Eskom bailout. Mboweni projected a 53 billion Rand revenue collection shortfall for the current financial year. The bulk of the 2018-19 shortfall resulted from weaker than expected economic growth in 2019. We now expect to collect 1.37 trillion Rand this year. This is 53 billion Rand or 4% less than we expected, the finance minister said. National Treasury has also adjusted economic growth expectations for 2019 downwards to 0.5% from the 1.5% forecast in February's budget speech. Additionally, weak demand, shrinking corporate and personal tax collection, and anemic economic growth means that the country's budget deficit is expected to increase to 6.5% in 2019. And the debt-to-GDP ratio is expected to rise to 71.3% by 2022-23, Citadel noted. On the other side of the coin, government expenditure this year has already exceeded the projected increases budgeted for in February, with even more spending still in the pipeline. Ackerman said that Mboweni then offered a stark warning to government that the situation is simply unsustainable and could see South Africa fall into a debt trap. For example, based on its current trajectory, the MTBPS demonstrated that without implementing the necessary reforms, this combination of rising spending and falling income could see South Africa's debt-to-GDP ratio breach the 80% mark within the next 10 years. This number would then send credit rating agencies screaming and almost certainly see South Africa suffer most ratings downgrades, the economist said. The Rand reacted violently to the speech, immediately shedding 20 cents and weakening from 14 Rand 60 to 14 Rand 80 to the dollar, while bond markets also saw a sell-off. The Rand ended the session north of 15 Rand, which is now about 15 Rand 10 cents to the dollar. Capping South Africa's growing budget deficit and staving off the vice-like crocodile jaws gripping the economy will not necessitate increasing tax collection on the revenue side, and Mboweni did mention that we would see more tax increases in the 2020 budget speech. Ackerman said, however, government is aware that it does not have much room to manoeuvre in this regard, as businesses and consumers are already under severe pressure, and further increases are likely to have very little impact in terms of generating additional revenue. That leaves government only one other option to increase revenue, namely kick-starting economic growth, which would in turn increase the size of the tax base, he says. Well, they're not going to do that with BEE in place, because what BEE allows is corrupt and incapable people to take management positions, and everything gets stolen. Look at the municipalities. There's only one municipality in South Africa that is actually running really well, and it's a white municipality called Orania. Every other municipality in South Africa, and they're all run by black ANC cadres or DA cadres or EFF cadres, they are all in the hole financially. A complete disgrace. You can see the common denominator with the one that is working. Enough said. Anyway, consequently, Mboweni outlined the key short-term and long-term issues that government needs to target. And on this front, it was very positive to see that one of the first areas that the state will be turning its attention to is tourism. Tourism. You sort out your crime first, guys. Tourists aren't going to come there for extreme sports. You know, South Africa is the rape capital of the world. Tourism. You have to be joking. Anyway, the tourism sector represents a low-hanging fruit for driving economic growth. The country has a great deal to offer tourists relative to the rest of the world. The sector doesn't require a huge amount of energy, which avoids placing additional pressure on Eskom, and for every tourist that visits our shores, some 10 jobs are created, according to Citadel. I don't know where they get that figure from. Measures such as reducing the cost of travelling to South Africa and reducing the amount of red tape for visas therefore represents easy wins for the country and could quickly see results, it said. Fix up your crime first, guys. Fix up your crime. It's a very, very simple formula to work out. Other measures such as diversifying the country's power generation, expanding telecommunications capacity, and lowering the cost of business are also crucial for kickstarting growth in the medium term, Citadel said. Ackerman said, but after years of seeing good ideas on paper with little action, I hope I'll be forgiven for remaining somewhat sceptical about the prospect for implementation. Exactly. Right on the money there. This said, Mboweni arguably seems to be quite bullish on government's ability to successfully act on the reforms needed to drive growth, as despite the headwinds of slowing global economic growth, National Treasury expects South Africa's GDP growth to increase from 0.5% in 2019 to 1.2% in 2020 and 1.7% in 2021, he said. One of the fastest growing items on government's expense sheet is the country's debt service costs, with average nominal growth of 13.7% expected between 2020, 2021 and 2022 and 2023. Ackerman said these costs, unfortunately, are drawing spending power away from critical areas such as skills development, job creation, education and healthcare, underscoring again that something needs to be done to halt South Africa's debt spiral. And on this front, the elephant in the room is quite obviously the public sector wage bill, which is currently the largest of all the OECD countries relative to GDP, accounting to 46% of all tax revenue in 2019-2020, as a result of years of an increasing public sector headcount and above-inflation wage increases. And let me just add, a lot of those people who work for government are on the take. Mboweni pointed out that adjusting for inflation, the average government wage has risen by a shocking 66% over the past 10 years, completely disproportionate to increases in the private sector, and without achieving a commensurate rise in productivity. The questions remain, however, whether government will be able to do anything about its wage bill, and particularly whether it will be able to successfully negotiate with trade unions to moderate wage increases to levels in line with or even slightly below inflation. Far more optimistically, Mboweni said he would also deal with some executive remuneration at state-owned enterprises, or SOEs, and fiscal leakage, i.e. theft. For the foreseeable future, salaries of Cabinet, Premier and MECs will thus be frozen at current levels, demonstrating that the top layer of government will have to take the pain along with society as a whole, he said. Well, that's a very nice gesture, but it's not going to fix the problem. The thing that is, the elephant in the room is BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. That's the elephant in the room. That's destroying South Africa. It's also called black privilege. Additionally, cars for Cabinet and the executives will be capped at 800,000 Rand, including VAT, although this is still at the luxury end of the scale, especially when compared to the average South African who uses public transport. Capped mobile phone claims and economy class domestic travel further round out budget cuts, and they're just a drop in the ocean. I mean, this is just ridiculous stuff. Other short-term plans for cutting back on excessive expenditure are expected to result in some 20 billion Rand in cost savings from various departments. Ackerman said, but while capping expenditure is important, the magic ingredient needed to restore the economies back to health for over the next 3 years is rather to stimulate economic growth through policy implementation. He continued, on the policy front, it is extremely positive to note that Mboweni recently published economic plan draws lessons from fast-growing emerging and sub-Saharan African economies, particularly as 5 of the fastest-growing countries in the world are currently in Africa. And in conclusion, let's look at what's happening with Moody's. In summary, on this trajectory, it is a question of when we will be downgraded, not if, said Ackerman. He said, at this stage, Moody's is our only saving grace, and they seem to be willing to give us a little time to see if we can deliver on our plans. But this is likely to be the last opportunity that we will get, if we get it at all. Given these numbers, the economist said that if we do not see proper implementation of Mboweni's economic growth proposals, South Africa will certainly be downgraded going into 2020. However, if we do put plans in place to get growth going, implement fiscal discipline and address the problems at the SOEs, then I believe the worst case scenario might be avoided and we could move on to a more sustainable future path. And Ackerman concluded by saying a successful outcome will, however, require hard work and commitment from all of us, including the trade unions. So there you have it. I'm predicting that they're going to put a negative warning on the Rand tomorrow, and it might not be downgraded to junk tomorrow by Moody's, but it certainly will be next year. And that will be reflected by the Rand. I reckon the Rand's going to go over 16 Rand before Christmas this year. We'll see what happens. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, stay safe. Bye for now.